Well, first of all, are there any circumstances where you would consider voting for a deal brought back from Brussels by Theresa May?
Well, if Theresa May was to bring back a deal that allowed the UK to stay in the customs union and the single market, that would certainly be something that would be considered, and that would be something that would meet the Labour Party's 6 tests that have been set out for some time now. So if she was able to do that and protect the economy of the UK, then it's something we'd certainly consider. But at the moment, it looks as though the Chequers plan, or Canada plus plus plus, or whatever plan you want to call it, is going to come back and be disastrous for the country. So we would certainly not support that.
But Labour's policy is not to stay in the single market, it's to stay in a customs union. And
well,
what Theresa May's deal seems to amount to is pretty much staying in a customs union and staying pretty close to the single market, which is what Jeremy Corbyn says he wants.
Well, the second test of Labour's 6 tests is to have the exact same benefits of the single market, and the only way to achieve that is to be in it, and the European Union have been very clear about that.
But it's not Labour policy to be in it.
It's a rules-based system. Well, that's the extrapolation of the Labour Party policy. You can't have the exact same benefits without actually having it. The EU is a rules-based system, and you have to either abide by those rules or you don't. And what the government is coming back with in terms of
Yes, but hang on, that's a problem for Labour rather than Theresa May, isn't it? The problem with Labour's 6 tests is they're internally contradictory. You can't, as you've just said, have the exact same benefits as the single market without being the single market, yet Labour policy is to leave the single market. And arguably, from your point of view, I presume, free movement would be one of the benefits of the single market, and that's not Labour policy either. So Labour's 6 tests don't internally contradict each other.
Well, let's just break down the 3 questions that you've asked here. The first part of the question is that the government are coming back with what looks like would be either the Chequers plan, unless it's dumped at the Cabinet meeting on Tuesday, or indeed a Canada plus plus plus. But whatever deal the government now comes back with, if they come back with a deal at all, it only is on goods and not services. Services are 80% of our economy, and the only way to achieve free trade in services is to stay in the very thing that allows you to do that, and that's the single market. So the exact same benefits of the single market mean that you have to be in it. The EU have been perfectly clear about that. So any deal that comes back from the European Union now will not meet the Labour Party's 6 tests, and therefore we won't support the government on that. But it looks as though there'll be a huge number of Conservative MPs that won't support the government as well, and indeed the DUP won't support the government because of the Irish backstop that would mean Northern Ireland staying in the customs union and the single market while the rest of the United Kingdom leave.
Should that backstop come into play, the Scottish government is saying, well, that's not fair. If Northern Ireland is in effect going to be in the single market, Scotland should be too. Do you accept that argument?
Well, the whole reason for the backstop being put in place is because of the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, because of the free flow between the European Union and what would be a non-European Union country. That doesn't apply to Scotland in this case, but I'm very clear, and I've been very clear for a number of years, that the whole of the UK should stay in the customs union and the single market. And interestingly, what the backstop's actually doing is an admittance from the UK government that the only way to resolve the issue in Northern Ireland is to have the customs union and the single market. So they've already agreed to that principle, but their own red lines to come out of both of those organisations means they're unable to...
But should this come to pass and the Scottish government says, that's not fair, we demand that we be part of the single market in the same way of Northern Ireland, would you back the Scottish government in saying that?
Well, we would certainly back the whole of the UK staying in the single market, the customs union, because what you would then have, if Scotland was to stay in the customs union and the single market, but the rest of the UK was not, is you'll have the same issues at the Scottish border as that you currently have, or looks as if you currently have, at the Northern Irish border. So you would end up with a hard border between Scotland and the rest of the UK, because Scotland would be in a system that requires to be compliant with the EU, and the rest of the UK not. So actually it would create a problem at the Scottish border, that the whole reason the backstop is being put in place is to resolve the same problem at the Irish border.
Would you be comfortable going into the lobbies with the hard Brexiteers who want to see a free market, Thatcherite, deregulated Britain as part of a no-deal Brexit? Would you be happy going into the lobbies with them to vote down Theresa May's proposals, which look like being stay in the customs union for some time, stay close to the single market, perhaps even let's have an extension to the transition phase so that talks in a future relationship can continue?
Well, I think the first premise of your question has to be what the Prime Minister comes back with. And if you look at all the analysis that's been done at the moment, it looks as if the Prime Minister's coming back with something that's going to look very much like a no deal and would probably be as disastrous as a no deal. The Chequers plan is unworkable. The EU have already said it's unworkable, and Canada Plus or whatever else they want to try and put together to come back with isn't going to work, because it's not going to work in terms of the issues of Ireland. It's not going to work for the UK economy. So actually, in this case scenario, a no deal and the Prime Minister's deal are pretty much close to each other. But what I'd be doing and what my colleagues would be doing would be voting down the plan that comes back from the EU with regards to the Prime Minister, because it doesn't meet the 6 tests, and then demanding a people's vote on that deal. And that would be the way that the country could have that democratic voice in terms of what they believe.
But that's not on the table as a proposal. You will have to vote for or against her proposals, which may well involve staying in the single market, at least for a period of several years. And you seem to be saying you just vote against that, even though, of course, you might think that should lead to another referendum. That's not what the Brexiteers want. They just want out of the EU. They want a no deal, and you might be helping them to get it.
Well, I think what your question shows is that there's no majority in the House of Commons at the moment for any particular aspect of this. There is the Jacob Rees-Mogg far-right wingers who want the UK just to fall out with no deal. There's the Prime Minister who's trying to cobble together some kind of compromise that the EU will not allow, and indeed her own cabinet are split on. There's a Labour Party position in terms of the 6 tests, and the opposition parties now coming together around a people's vote. So there is no majority in Parliament for any of these scenarios, and therefore when you're left with the binary choice of supporting something that's bad or trying to find a different way through it, I'll certainly take the different way through it, and hopefully beyond that, with all the mechanisms that we will then have at our disposal in Parliament, we can plan for a people's vote and put all of this back to the people, because it's quite clear that the 650 MPs can't come to a consensus, because what the Prime Minister is promoting and what the hard right are promoting in the Conservative Party are really bad for the country.
All right, Ian Murray, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Now, there's broad agreement that the Scottish Government's ambition to expand free child